This is Allie, the Ninja Girl, and we are here on the Ninja's Way podcast. Today, we're going to be talking to Jake Marshman from Conquer Ninja. He is our co-host and by himself a titan here in the ninja industry. We're going to ask him some interesting questions today, and thanks for joining us, Jake.
Yeah, thank you. I haven't ever heard of me being a Titan, but I think you're right.
I think by definition you would qualify as a Titan.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And now I need to edit my bio.
Yeah, we gotta put that in there.
the Ninja Titan. There you go.
Yeah, no, this is exciting, guys. I'm excited to chat with you guys and talk business.
Yeah, so let's hop right in. First, just give us the story of you. Like, how did you get into ninja and what even put you on this path in the first place?
Yeah, that could take a whole hour there, but I'll try to expedite it. But really, originally, it stemmed from fitness, but before I got in the ninja industry, it goes back to out of high school. I've always been more interested in working with my hands and creating things. Out of high school, I was in construction and I was a building contractor, a licensed contractor by the like in my early 20s, late teens, early 20s. So I was always more of a natural entrepreneur. One, because I think I have a high pain tolerance, and two, I just always wanted to be doing something new or creating something.
Yeah.
And in a standard job, it's hard to be creative unless it's a really creative job. So anyway, through my 20s, I was in the construction industry more or less. And I was in and out of other companies that I was interested in, other things. But all along the way, I was in fitness. Out of high school, I joined my first regular gym when I moved to Boston out of high school, and I joined a Gold's Gym. And so that's where all my fitness passion started. And so all along the way through my 20s, I was creating things through my business and construction. And at a certain point, I started to plateau on that and lose interest. And that's when I shifted to the fitness side of things. And I got more into the business of fitness. And so in the late or the 2010s, about 2012, I was doing more personal training, more working at gyms, helping build out gyms. And that was a transition from my construction background into the fitness background. And along the way, somewhere in 2014-ish, the creativity kicked in and the popularity of the Tough Mudders or the obstacle course racing and popularity of American Ninja Warrior was gaining popularity. And I had I just on a whim, I thought of doing ninja obstacles in a gym or in a space that I deemed to be a gym. And it just took off. And fast forward 8, 9 years, we're 11 locations, or I've built now over time, over the last 8 years, or 9 years, I've built over 30 ninja gyms and obstacle courses throughout the country, some in Canada, including 11 Conquer Ninja gyms and growing.
That's awesome.
So Jake, with you were mentioning Tough Mudder first before American Ninja Warrior. Were you originally sucked into that OCR vein, or was it like you saw the show?
Yeah. Yeah, so originally, in 2008, for some of our younger viewers, there was a subprime housing crisis, and so that affected construction. The economy was super bad. To dumb it down, the economy was terrible going into 2008 or coming out of 2008,
So, yeah,
2009,
2009.
and
Yeah.
killed the construction industry more or less. Like it hurt my company pretty bad. And at that point, I had my now business partner involved in that company as well. So I've done this with a team, built these gyms and stuff with a team, including my business partner. But I was at that point, then I was in the fitness, and it forced me to transition into other avenues of revenue. And fitness was one of my other passions. And so CrossFit was gaining popularity then. So I was more into the CrossFit type workout, Olympic lifting, and things like that. And it morphed into competing in the Tough Mudders and things like that. And so that's what it built off of. That's where it kicked in for me. I can build these things. Like this is creative spirit came back, and I'm like, okay, this is something I want to do or put my energy into this. And it took off from there with my expertise in construction.
What a fascinating angle to think about, that you would think having trade skills and being able to do construction and build houses would be the more surefire way to ensure a business's livelihood over a long time. And then here comes this economic crash, the housing market tanks. Obviously, there's this whole adjustment that's having to happen between the banking, essentially the funding of the housing markets and all of that. And then it transitions from you to go into fitness, which many people, I would say, would now say that's a way more volatile industry to get involved in versus, hey, if I were to open up a plumbing business, I feel like that'd be almost a surefire shot. But it's just, that's so fascinating to think that it's like,
Yep.
it can really be different depending on the conditions of the market and what people need and want.
And that's part of what I learned too. And that's part of gaining knowledge. And what people need to understand, or younger people need to understand, there's so much more knowledge that you can get now than when I was starting my first businesses in late 90s. Like, you had to know people who were in the industry for 10, 20, 30 years to learn from them. Like now, you can learn a second language in a week. Like it's, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you have access to so much information.
The access to information is astonishing now. With that said, where you're going with that is now I still am an active contractor. Like, I still will do some projects because the demand is back more than ever. And it's cyclical like that. But I lost my passion for it. Like, I couldn't even go into a Home Depot or a Lowe's without physically getting sick. Like,
I
I
PTSD.
hated, yeah.
I had PTSD from it.
And I just hated it so bad. So I shifted my passion and found it in another industry, which was fitness. And then that's where the obstacle came into play. And then the popularity with Ninja, and I was pretty active and pretty physically fit, and Ninja was relatively easier for me. So I'm like, oh, this is cool. And we built some obstacles, and then I did the first gym, and it took off from there. And so now I still have the passion for that because I love doing the design and build of the gyms we're doing now as much as the business itself. So
yeah, that was something I was going to ask you. Like, that first gym, did you go in there and like actually construct and build the obstacles? And are you still doing that now, or is that kind of
yeah? So, well, a little bit of both, but
I was gonna say,
yeah, it's that for us trying to scale this now, I'm bringing on coaching up and training up our team to be able to help me build out a gym. But if it's all laid out and ready to go, like, we can have one set up really quick within a week or two, depending on if the space is ready or whatnot. But yeah, my original one, it was me and one of my other subcontractors. We went in and had a blank space and built it out. We have pictures of it now. Like, we go back and look at the pictures. It was wood construction framed. It was pretty crude. Like, I had cannonballs. The cannonballs made out of lacrosse balls with bolts through them that we just hung from. So
yeah,
like, we were super creative with it. Yeah,
those are slippery. I bet. Were they slippery?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It doesn't matter. The ninjas always complain it's too slippery or something.
Yeah.
But like, that was part of what I loved about it, because we were just creating. And there, in 2014, 2015, there wasn't like sites we could just go order obstacles from either. And
no,
that was
really isn't.
This age of like backyard Ninja Warrior. Like, most of it was like stuff in their backyard so they could train for the show, because these gyms that didn't even really exist. And we still see some of those gyms still in that kind of backyard stage, but it was definitely that early starting point for Ninja.
Oh yeah, there was, most obstacles are pre-sketched. That was early on. I knew that because I had a business background, and I didn't necessarily go into building the Ninja gym and opening a Ninja gym to specifically be a ninja. Where early on in those days, a lot of the gyms that were popping up were people that, or gym owners that wanted to be
have
ninjas.
Their own training grounds, basically.
Correct. And early on in this Minnesota market, there's one or two other gyms that were getting their footing too, and they were just shocked that I wasn't
trying to be
passionate
on the
about
show.
training. Yeah,
Yeah.
trying to be on the show,
Yeah.
but it wasn't that I didn't want to. It just wasn't necessarily the
Well, let's
passion that
drive
I
into
had for
that. Let's drive into that,
it.
Jake. What was the central motivator for you to open up the facility? What did you
Yeah.
envision for it?
Similar to the creation of this is it was the creation of it and the being able to create something, and then secondly being able to build it, and then third actually having a business built out of it that I actually liked going to, or I
Yeah.
liked doing. Because again, like I was saying, I'm a natural entrepreneur. I've lost lots of money being an entrepreneur and I've made money, but you have to be willing to take the punches if you want to be an entrepreneur. And that's why earlier I was saying I just have a high pain tolerance. And that's a strain on a relate. If you're married, that's can be a strain on your relationship. There's pros and cons. There's certain freedoms and then there's certain sacrifices. But for me, I opened that gym as a secondary source of income. I didn't really open it as, hey, this has to work. But the story is, and this is, I opened that gym in early 2015 and it was part time. And so the first week we opened, it was just me, and I didn't really have any other coaches, but I had, I put some classes in. And again, I came from the fitness background and fitness business. So I put in some classes, had some times available, whatever, but it was limited. And then one of the other local businesses was like a trampoline park and they wanted to cross promote. And I'm like, yeah, sure. I had no email following at that point for this business. And so they're like, oh, okay, let's cross promote. And because Ninja was new and unique, and they're like, this ain't going to last. And so they're like, yeah, we'll promote with you. So they sent out a flyer for me. And the following week I showed up and there was like a line waiting at the door. I'm like, oh shit,
Wow.
I might have something going here. So it took off from there, and then it turned into we're a franchise company now, growing the ninja industry and the sport of ninja. So it's really worked.
So is that kind of when you saw the writing on the wall? Is you that moment where you got to the business and you're just like, there was just this demand for it immediately?
Yep. So it wasn't. I bet you it was about 3 months after that. I was pretty much full time into Conquer Ninja and growing the gyms because at that point I didn't even entertain birthday parties, but my kids were birthday party age. And when I say that, they were 5 to 8 year old at that point. And so we had a lot of family friends that were close and they're like, oh, we want to do our birthday party. And I hadn't even priced them out yet. So I wasn't even, I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, this is another line of revenue that I didn't consider because in the gym industry, you're not selling kids' birthday parties, you're selling memberships, you're selling one-on-one small group training, and that's what I modeled it around. But the parties took off and then we just kept building it from there. And so about 3 months after, that's probably when I was basically full-time into Conquer Ninja and trying to grow. Early on it was Conquer Ninja Warrior until I got threatened legally by the production company that owns American Ninja Warrior. And so everybody knows Ninja Warrior is trademarked. So don't try to trademark that or use that in your name. I think they've backed off a little bit now, but early on they didn't like that.
Yeah, totally.
So now
So
we're Conquer Ninja Gyms, which Conquer Ninja is trademarked too. So don't try that.
yeah, Jake does have a legal team for our listeners, so let's not
Yes,
test
we
that.
do.
Um,
We do.
so Jake, what would you say is like the birthday parties start kicking in, you just that boom comes in initially, you start to grow. What kind of becomes your primary focus for growth in the businesses? Is it kids classes, adult classes, open gym? What did you see as the road forward of these are going to be the primary avenues by which we drive revenue?
Yeah, great question. Early on, it was just that it's okay, this is what people didn't understand or other gyms. So now we're going into the first year and now it's gaining traction in the industry, especially in the Minneapolis St. Paul market, where that's where I'm at currently. And that's where our original gym is, the original one that I opened. It was entertainment. Like we looked at it as entertainment because it was the birthday parties. When I had finally brought on a couple of staffers, which one of my original ones, Dan, who's Delano, who's been on the show several times, and he's still does testing for the show and everything every year. He's still with us doing a lot of our media and stuff. But early on, when I brought him in, he helped me get things organized because I was just basically reactive because it was so busy. And I'm just like, geez, I need help. But it was really the entertainment. So we were focused on the weekend parties, stuff like that. The open gyms were huge. Like the open gyms were just gangbusters. And the only marketing I was really doing, I wasn't really doing much at all. It was really just through social media, through Facebook. And I literally was not doing much marketing.
Well, and
So
birthday parties, right? Like those serve as a massive marketing tool of just bringing people into the gym.
yeah, one kid would have their party and we get 3, 4 more booked off it without even
trying. Yeah.
trying. Yes. And so me being in business for like almost 20 years at that point, full disclosure, I'm 46 if people are wondering, but being in business way before that and understanding business, my business partner and I, we've done businesses together, we've done them separately, and then we always would come back when we'd find something that was working well, we'd team up and build systems around it. So as soon as this guy was taking off, I'm like, okay, we need to start systemizing this. And that's what we started doing. But when my point of talking about Dan was when I brought Dan in, it was 4 or 5 months in or whatever it was, he started auditing at that time we used for a point of sale system was MindBody. And there's 6, 8 parties here that aren't even closed out. I was doing parties back to back on no time in between. No, like I was just pounding these parties out. And if I entertained that with staff now, they'd be like, oh, this is undoable. No, it's doable. I did it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And it's a grind. You get done with a day of that. But I would just be like trying to offer a good in-gym product. And I would just tell the parent, I'm like, I'll just catch up with you tomorrow and we'll do it over the phone and I'll get you closed out. Don't worry about it. I just spaced that. So so I needed the help. And so we started bringing in other ninjas and then we started building up the competitions. So early on in the industry, which you guys probably know, it was the young adults that wanted to be ninjas. And those are the people doing ninja, or those are the ones that understood the sport of ninja or wanted to be in the sport of ninja, where there still wasn't anything built around it being a sport and there wasn't any big
prior to
competitions,
like organization bodies or
organizations and stuff like that, except for the show.
Yep.
And so early on, it was really entertainment. And that was what we were focused on and really focused on just doing competitions for the ninjas that want to compete. And it continued more from there to where today we're really focused on the sport of ninja from young kids all the way up to adults. And that's the growth of ninja itself is really into that sport because now there's a lot of competitions and things like that.
And when you say sport, you're referring to like classes that are designed on building the skill sets of the athlete.
Right. Yeah. So like most people are familiar with UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship.
Yeah.
So early on, the UFC, it was wrestlers, even up to 10 years ago. It's wrestlers or kickboxers or jiu-jitsu guys. It was individual different sports. Now they're really the athletes that are the fighters that are fighting in the UFC now are first generation ultimate fighters, are first generation MMA fighters. Like they've been working on all the disciplines, and that's where we're at now with Ninja. Is some of those members that I had 9 years ago, they're young adults now, and they're first generation full ninja, and they're phenomenal compared to what we were doing years ago. And we talked about this briefly. The obstacles, you look at the show too, we just laugh at it because it's like, how easy were those obstacles 8 years ago or 9 years ago?
Yeah.
And
you're like, that's what my 7 to 9-year-olds do now.
Exactly. Yeah. So now that's where we're at. And that's what the progression of it went from the entertainment to the actual sport. And we've changed with that. And that's our trajectory to continue to be successful.
Yeah, and I think that you bring up a really interesting point of we are now at this evolved state of we have the first wave of first generation ninjas, and even the show caught on to it, right? A couple of years ago they brought the age bracket down, and now you see these 13 to 15-year-old young ninjas going out and just dominating this sport because they grew up in a ninja gym, right? Like they've had access
Hmm.
to these obstacles and this type of training since they were 5 or 6 years old, and now they're like grown trained ninjas. And I think it's really shaking up the sport, especially the people in the older generation of the sport right now, of trying to adapt to that, because now you have these kids that are coming in that were literally built for it.
Right. And that's part of the progression of the sport too, is what we've had and implemented is no matter where you're starting, you start with your same level. So
Mm.
whether you're new to the sport or you're moved from out of town and you were an elite ninja at another, gym, there's a spot and we can figure out where you fit. Early on, there wasn't, you had one great ninja and then a bunch of beginners that or doing the same classes, whatever it was. But no, it's progressed so much. And that's part of the progression of building the gyms too. Like
Mm.
you always got to be looking at the safety aspect. You got to be looking at, because when I'm still thinking about things that I did, you know, 8 years ago or 5 years ago, whatever it was. And my coaches and ninjas are like, hey, can you do this or build this? I'm like, that's not even a thing you can do. And then they do it. It's like, holy smokes. So it's like, I'm getting to the point where I'm like, I feel like that old guy where it's like, oh no, we can't do that. And then it's, oh wait, I guess we can.
Hmm.
Yeah, they keep showing us what's possible and pushing the
Hmm.
boundaries. And that's what I
Yeah.
love
And
about the youth of the sport growing up in it, is they're showing us a whole new world of what can become possible with ninja.
exactly. And their physical feats that they're doing, it's like amazing
Hmm.
what the strength that they have and stuff.
So
This is, and the beauty of it is it's the male and females, like
Hmm.
that's the beauty of youth ninja. Like they both can be phenomenal and equal athletes.
yeah, and a lot of these leagues are compete have the age gender separators as well, of the girls are competing against the girls and the boys are competing against boys. But really they're like the athletes are competing against the course. And that's part of what I think is
Right.
cool about ninja, is everybody says, "Ah, the ninja community is so supportive." I think that speaks to part of that, of that we're competing against the course or the time, and maybe not necessarily the person standing next to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've,
No,
I've
that
always said that the course becomes like a buffer between the athletes of like you are in a sense, especially in competition, you are going to compete against other athletes, but the course becomes the buffer between them. Towards you're really competing against the course. If another athlete masters the course, then it's not like they bested you so much as they bested the course better than you.
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah.